Welcome to Dreamy History. Tonight, you're invited to drift away into the quietly fascinating world of ancient Rome, not through battles or emperors, but through the quiet scratching of styluses on wax tablets, the worn scrolls, the scent of parchment and ink. Yes, this story is about the humble Roman scribal clerks, their days, their tools, and the slow rhythm of their lives. Before we begin, I invite you to get comfortable. Dim the lights, pull your blanket around you, loosen any tension in your jaw or shoulders, and take a slow breath in and out. Let the weight of the day slip away. Let the past whisper gently in your ear. Let your thoughts drift calmly, like dust caught in a sunbeam. Now, imagine you are not in the present. You are seated quietly in the corner of a Roman tabularium, the record office where every scrawl tells a story, and every scratch of the stylus marks a moment of ancient life preserved. Let us begin. The day begins, as it has for so many days before, in the dim interior of a Roman insula, multi-story apartment block built primarily of brick, timber, and concrete. The apartment, positioned on one of the upper floors, is small and windowless on the inside wall, though a single wooden shutter opens toward the narrow alley below. The morning light has not yet entered fully. There is a faint glow along the seams of the shutter, an orange hue cast by the earliest rays of sunlight as they filter through layers of smoke and dust from the street below. Inside, the clerk Marcus lies quietly on a modest wooden bed, its legs uneven on the cracked tiled floor. The mattress is stuffed with straw, sometimes replaced, sometimes not. A thin woolen blanket lies crumpled near his knees, its edge worn and frayed. He does not stir quickly. The silence is not total, but the sounds are distant, muted, and layered cartwheels creak. Muffled footsteps pass below. A dog barks once, then falls silent again. The walls around him, coated in aged lime plaster, reveal faded traces of painted decoration, though none so vibrant anymore. There is no urgency in the air, no clamor, just the subtle, predictable hum of another Roman day beginning. The air is thick with the combined scents of oil from the neighbor's lamp, the dust of the night, the slow smoke of early ovens, and something indistinct but constant, perhaps the scent of the dried fish stall on the corner, which opens before sunrise and never truly closes. Marcus does not speak aloud. In this moment, words are unnecessary. He blinks slowly. He lets the ambient stillness soak into his bones. Like countless scribal clerks before him, and countless more to come, the start of the day is not marked by anything sudden or dramatic. It is slow, uneventful, measured. Eventually, with a practiced slowness born of repetition and necessity, Marcus shifts his weight and rises from the bed. The beginning of his routine is the same as always. It has been this way since he first moved into this room nearly 4 years ago. It will be the same tomorrow. The rhythm of his life, like the rhythm of the city around him, is steady, predictable, and unremarkable. He does not sigh, he does not smile. He simply sits upright, allowing his mind to collect itself, one thought at a time, as the morning continues to unfold in its familiar and uneventful way. Marcus stands and stretches his arms slowly, his joints cracking softly in the stillness of the room. The process of dressing is not hurried, it is mechanical. He begins by reaching for his woolen tunic, neatly folded and placed the night before on a small bench near his bedside. The tunic is undyed, coarse, practical. The hem is threadbare but intact. He lifts it over his head with a slow, deliberate motion, allowing the weight of the fabric to settle across his shoulders. The wool is slightly stiff in the morning cool, but not uncomfortable. It is the same tunic he wears each working day. It is washed irregularly, depending more on availability of water than preference for cleanliness. Next comes the belt, simple leather, looped and tied in the same way it has been every morning for years. It serves no decorative purpose. Its only function is to hold the tunic in place and support the small pouch that contains his stylus and a wax tablet. The belt creaks slightly as it tightens around his waist. There is no rush, no deviation from the routine. He walks with measured steps toward the clay basin in the corner of the room, its surface lightly coated in mineral deposits from repeated use. The water inside is cool and still, having sat uncovered through the night. With cupped hands, he lifts a small amount to his face and splashes it gently across his skin. There is no soap. Soap is reserved for those who require it, and he does not. A cloth, slightly damp from the night before, is used to dry his cheeks, chin, and forehead in small, repetitive circles. There is no scent of lavender or oil, lonely, the faint smell of mineral water and the woven cloth. He opens a small wooden drawer built crudely into the wall. Inside lies his stylus, bronze-tipped, slender, utilitarian. He examines it with care, turning it in his fingers to ensure the writing end is clean and the erasing end remains smooth and flat. This inspection is part of the routine. It always has been. He has performed it nearly every day for as long as he can remember. Alongside it lies his wax tablet, its surface dark and faintly scratched, though still serviceable. These are not sentimental objects. They are tools, used, reused, maintained. He wraps the items in a piece of cloth and slides them into a worn leather pouch. He ties it with twine, the same length he uses each morning. Everything must be in order. There is no room for deviation. There is no place for creativity. Marcus does not think of the day ahead as exciting. He does not dread it either. It simply is. The next part of his morning will proceed, as always, with food. But for now, the preparation is complete. His appearance is the same as yesterday and the day before, and the week before that. It is enough. Marcus now turns to the modest matter of breakfast. There is no table. Instead, he squats lightly on the step just outside his apartment's doorway, which opens onto a shadowed inner courtyard. The stone beneath him is cool, but not uncomfortable. This is the same place he sits every morning. The habit is not chosen for any particular view or reason. It is simply where the light touches the ground in the most familiar way, and where the neighbors seldom disturb it. His meal is simple. It is always simple. The same elements return, again and again, in slight variations, depending on what was left over from the day before. Today, like most days, he pulls a small clay dish from his side, on which sits a single coarse loaf of panis rusticassa dense, dark bread made of wholemeal flour and baked in communal ovens the evening before. The crust is hard, uneven. He tears off a corner, chewing slowly, not for pleasure, but for necessity. It is dry and requires effort to swallow. He reaches for his small cup, filled with Posca-diluted mixture of vinegar and water, slightly sour, and often consumed by the lower classes of Roman society. The drink softens the bread enough to make it edible. The vinegar stings faintly on his tongue, but has become so familiar that the sensation barely registers. It is not a drink to savor. It is a drink to endure. He takes small sips, timed precisely with his bites. Occasionally, when fortune allows, there may be a few olives left from the previous day. Today, 3 remain in a shallow dish black, wrinkled, and heavily salted. He eats them one at a time, each pit left neatly on the stone beside him. There is also half of a fig, dried, its texture leathery, its flavor concentrated and cloying. It is the only item in the meal that can be considered mildly sweet, though by now even that sweetness seems faint and utilitarian. Around him, the courtyard remains mostly still. A woman descends a staircase across the way, carrying a pail of water. A child's voice echoes faintly, followed by the thud of a wooden door. Above, a pigeon flaps and coos lazily on a windowsill. The city is waking, but it does not disturb the rhythm of Marcus's routine. He chews, he sips, he swallows. The act of eating is not accompanied by reflection. He does not think of childhood meals or future indulgences. Food is fuel, and this fuel, cheap, dry, bland, is sufficient for another long day of transcription. The meals of Scribal Clerks were rarely remembered. They were rarely described, but they repeated them daily, methodically, with as much regularity as they recorded contracts, legal declarations, or receipts for grain. When he finishes, he sets his cup down beside the doorway and brushes crumbs from his lap with the back of his hand. The act is neither rushed nor delayed. It is done with mechanical finality. The first task of the day sustenance is now complete. The next will be the walk to the tabularium, where his writing station awaits. But for now, he sits a moment longer, watching nothing in particular, thinking of nothing significant. The pigeons rustle again. A baker's apprentice calls out for firewood. The city moves onward, and so does Marcus. Having finished his meal, Marcus steps onto the street. The leather soles of his sandals slap softly against the worn stone pavement, each step familiar, measured, and unchanging. The street is narrow, as most in this part of Rome are framed on either side by the tall facades of neighboring insulae. Sunlight barely touches the ground here. The beams, fractured by the upper stories and laundry lines above, fall in narrow slats across his path. The scent of the city is strongest at this hour, a combination of baker's smoke, animal refuse, fresh bread, damp stone, and the lingering staleness of waste carried out in the early morning hours. Marcus does not register it with offense. These are the smells of his world. They are not clean, but they are familiar. As he walks, he passes shops beginning to open. A cobbler adjusting the position of sandals on a low bench. A fruit seller setting baskets of figs in a careful stack. A smith's apprentice sweeping away the cinders of last night's fire. Some nod to him in recognition. He does not stop. His daily path is predictable past the temple of Castor and Pollux, then past the corner where the street slopes slightly, always unevenly, where the rainwater pools after heavy storms. The groove in the stone there is known to him. He adjusts his gait for it. Children dart between passers-by. Oh, one plays with a hoop made of bronze. Another carries a small bundle of sticks. An old woman balances a basket on her back, wrapped in a woolen cloth. None of them speak to Marcus, and he does not speak to them. He walks with a purpose, though not urgency. There is no expectation that he will arrive early, only that he will arrive, that he will take his place at his assigned table, and that he will begin, without complaint, the day's transcription. The city sounds grow louder as he approaches the forum, the public heart of Roman civic life. Here, senators stroll in pairs, slaves carry bundles, and messengers hurry with wax tablets tied in twine. But Marcus moves past them all. He is not one of them. His destination is the tabularium, located at the base of the Capitoline Hiller Government Archive, a place not for rhetoric or glory, but for storage and record. The building itself is massive and cool, built of stone and positioned above the forum on one side. To the average passerby, it is unremarkable, just another structure of public use. But to Marcus, it is a second home. Its steps are worn from generations of feet. Its door, heavy and dark, creaks faintly when opened. He enters without hesitation. Inside, the light dims. The air is cooler here, protected from the heat of the sun. The scent shifts from bread and smoke to ink, parchment, dust, and limestone. The noise of the city fades, muffled by stone walls, replaced by the softest sounds, the shuffle of sandals, the faint clearing of a throat, the creak of a wooden chair. He has arrived. The walk is complete, and so begins another day in quiet repetition. Marcus steps through the stone threshold of the tabularium, and as he enters, the sounds of the outer world fall away almost completely. The thick walls, constructed of travertine and tuff, insulate the interior from the bustling noises of the forum and the clamor of Roman commerce. Inside, the atmosphere is cool and slightly damp. Light filters through narrow slit windows, placed high along the upper wall more for ventilation than illumination. The shafts of light cast narrow columns onto the flagstone floor, illuminating floating dust particles that drift slowly in the still air. The record hall is long and lined with rows of wooden desks, each one allocated to a clerk or assistant scribe. The desks are not ornate. They are utilitarian worn, smooth by years of use, each bearing ink stains, wax residue, and the fine scratches of daily repetition. Scroll racks rest behind the desks, organized by topic, jurisdiction, and author, though the organization is not always intuitive. Some scrolls date back decades, others are newly copied and awaiting confirmation. The scent is distinctive: aged parchment, beeswax, oil for the lamps, and the slightly sour smell of damp wood that has absorbed the moisture of countless Roman winters. Marcus moves silently across the stone floor. He does not pause to speak. There is no need for verbal greetings here. Most of the scribes acknowledge each other with a faint nod, or not at all. Words are saved for transcription. He finds his desk, placed 3 rows from the eastern wall, near a small niche that once held a votive statue, but now serves as an alcove for scroll storage. The stool is simple and wooden, slightly uneven in one leg, and familiar enough that Marcus adjusts for its imperfection without thinking. He sets his pouch on the table. One by one, he removes his tools. First, the stylus carefully unwrapped and inspected again under the better lighting of the hall. Then the wax tablet, which he smooths with the side of his hand to confirm its readiness. Finally, a damp cloth wrapped around a pinch of pumice for smoothing errors, and a vial containing a small amount of ink for use when parchment or papyrus must be copied. Around him, other clerks are already working. Their heads are bent low. The only consistent sounds are the scratch of styluses against wax, the occasional flip of a scroll, and the barely audible sighs of men who have copied the same phrases hundreds, even thousands of times. The writing rhythm is slow and careful. Accuracy is paramount. Even a small error could mean hours of rewriting, not only for the clerk, but for the official, depending on the document. Marcus sits. His breathing slows further. There is no conversation, no distraction. The only thing before him is the tablet, the stylus, and the content to be transcribed. He does not begin with flourish. He does not pause to consider the meaning of the words he will write. His task is not to think creatively, but to copy, to preserve, to repeat. As his stylus touches the surface of the wax for the first time that day, there is no satisfaction, no annoyance, only the familiarity of motion, the soft press of metal into wax, the steady left-to-right movement, the occasional lifting and turning, the rhythm of the scribal life. This is not a place of drama. It is not a place of glory. It is a place of record. And Marcus, like those before and after him, contributes silently, word by word. The act of transcription is deceptively simple in its appearance, yet it is built upon layers of discipline, structure, and technical repetition. As Marcus settles in, his first assignment of the day is to copy a property transfer contract, one of the most common legal instruments in Roman civic life. The original document lies open beside him, written in a practiced legal hand, structured according to established formulae, known in Latin as formulae tabellaria. These standard structures are followed with almost religious devotion to ensure uniformity across cities and provinces. The process begins with the heading typically listing the date, the names of the parties involved, and the location of the transaction. Marcus reads each line carefully, softly mouthing the words in rhythm with his writing, not for comprehension, but to control his pace. On the 15th day, before the calends of September, in the consulship of, and so on, each line must be exact, each character precise. The wax tablet before him is lined faintly, guiding his hand, and preventing the letters from drifting upward or downward as fatigue takes its toll. The names must be spelled precisely. Roman names often carry multiple components, prenomen, nomen, cognomen. Misplacing even one letter could change the identity of the party. He double-checks every name, then copies it in capital letters, scriptura, capitalis, the preferred legal style for important contracts. Every abbreviation follows custom. Every mark must be clear. Once the parties are identified, the transaction's terms are transcribed. In this case, the exchange of land for coin. He notes the parcel's location, measured in Ugera, Roman land unit. He writes, bounded on the north by the road, on the south by the property of Lucius Caecilius, Felix, and so on. These details may seem trivial, but they serve legal purposes. Marcus does not consider the land itself. He has never seen it. He has no knowledge of the men involved, but he must still record it with full diligence. If the document involves witnesses, their names are listed next. Sometimes they have signatures, sometimes only a Marcan X or an abbreviated name. Marcus copies them all, indifferent to the people they represent. Then the closing phrase, the subscriptio, is copied word for word, a formal end to a formal task. His hand moves slowly, stylus raised and pressed with gentle pressure, not too deep, not too shallow. Each letter carved with care into the dark surface. From time to time, he lifts the stylus and uses its flat edge to smooth a mistake. The movement is practiced, the correction invisible to all but the writer. There is no sense of completion when he finishes, no triumph. He simply sets the wax tablet aside and retrieves the next scroll. The process will begin again. Another contract, another set of names, another arrangement of land, of coin, of promise. It is work without praise, but it is necessary. It is trusted. And so he continues. As the sun begins its slow ascent toward the zenith, its warmth penetrates the thick stone walls of the tabularium with gradual persistence. The air, once cool and still, grows heavier, tinged now with the scent of warm wax, old parchment, and human presence. Light continues to filter through the narrow slit windows, though it no longer falls in crisp lines. Instead, it spills across the floor in wider patches, illuminating the fine dust that floats continuously, disturbed only by the slow movements of scribes and clerks. It is midday not marked by bells or shouting, but by the natural, internal rhythm of the clerks who, over the years, have learned to read the hour through shadows and scent and bodily fatigue. Marcus lifts his head for the first time in several hours. He does not stretch, he does not yawn. He simply blinks slowly, sets his stylus aside, and lifts the wooden tablet he has been copying from. He checks the last line again out of habit rather than necessity. The ink is beginning to dry on the final line of the parchment, curling slightly at the edge where it meets the margin. Without speaking, he rises from his stool. Around him, other scribes do the same, not all at once, but in a staggered, quiet procession. Each knows his own threshold for eye strain, for aching hands, for the dull throb behind the temples that comes from too much focus on small letters under inadequate light. Marcus exits through the same side door he has used every day. It opens onto a narrow courtyard, enclosed on all sides by the building. There is no garden here, no mosaic floor or shaded pergola, just stone benches, a worn fountain that drips more than it flows, and patches of dry weeds growing along the base of the wall. He does not seek beauty here, he seeks silence. He sits on a bench that has grown smooth from years of use. It is neither warm nor cold, simply neutral. He opens a cloth-wrapped bundle tied with twine, inside the same contents as yesterday. A small piece of coarse bread, now stiffer than it was this morning. A handful of olives, preserved heavily in brine, and a wedge of goat cheese, modest in size and crumbling at the edges. There is also a cup of pasca, the diluted vinegar drink favored by laborers and the lower classes. The cup is wooden, its inside stained dark from repeated use. He eats slowly, without emotion. The bread is hard and requires effort to chew. The olives are sharp and salty. The cheese leaves an oily residue on his fingers. The pasca stings his throat slightly, but it is familiar and grounding. Each bite is the same as the last. Each sip follows the same timing. His eyes drift across the courtyard, but do not settle on anything in particular. Other clerks sit nearby, some eating, some resting, with their eyes closed. One man leans back against the wall, arms folded across his chest, breathing slow and even. Another hums quietly under his breath, not a tune so much as a pattern of sounds, perhaps to keep himself awake, or perhaps out of habit. No one speaks. There is no need. The break is not for conversation. It is a release from verbal obligation. Sometimes pigeons enter the courtyard, pecking at crumbs left by careless hands. Marcus watches one such bird now, its feathers mottled gray and white, its feet slightly lame. It hops toward his bench, but does not come close. He does not feed it. The bird departs, unnoticed by anyone else. After finishing his meal, Marcus brushes the crumbs from his tunic, carefully refolds the cloth that held his food, and places it back into his satchel. He does not rise immediately. He remains seated for several more minutes, allowing his hands to rest on his knees, fingers slightly curled, head slightly bowed. Eventually, when the sun begins to shift in angle and the courtyard's shadows stretch just slightly longer, he rises. There is no signal, no official end to the pause. But the clerks return, one by one, to their desks. As they always do, the work will continue. The documents await. The ink is ready. The tablets are still warm from the morning's labor. And so the rhythm of the day resumes, just as it did yesterday and as it will tomorrow. The afternoon hours are reserved not for transcription, but for the quieter, more meticulous task of filing. Archiving, though less mentally demanding than writing, requires its own kind of concentration, a slow, careful sorting of completed scrolls and wax tablets into their assigned storage locations. This is the part of the day where physical order replaces mental labor. Marcus returns to his desk and retrieves a small stack of completed scrolls, each one tied with linen and marked with a tag made from thin parchment. These tags contain brief notations, names, dates, topics. The ink is black, sometimes slightly faded, written in the same unembellished hand that produced the scroll's content. Each scroll is rolled tightly, tied at 2 or 3 points with string or ribbon, and smoothed along its edge to prevent curling. He rises and makes his way to the rear of the tabularium, where the archive shelves stand. These are tall wooden structures built into the walls, resembling a grid of cubbyholes, each one housing scrolls related to a specific matter: legal judgments, property deeds, business transactions, birth records, and more. There is no central guide, no index, just the knowledge passed from one clerk to the next. The location of a scroll is not obvious to outsiders. It is learned, memorized, and practiced. Marcus scans the labels affixed to each cubby. Some are recent, others decades old. He finds the correct niche-marked negotiations. Private hand carefully slides the first scroll inside, then the next and the next. He does this slowly, gently, ensuring each scroll does not crush or bend the ones beneath it. If the cubby is full, he transfers a few scrolls to an overflow basket, which will later be placed in an auxiliary room for records awaiting reorganization. The dust here is thick, not disturbed by daily activity. The smell of old paper and moldy linen hangs in the air. Marcus does not react to it. He has breathed it for years. Occasionally, a scroll resists entry. The linen binding may be tied too tightly or awkwardly placed. When this happens, Marcus unties it, re-rolls the scroll, and reties it with careful precision. This takes time, but there is no rush. The purpose of this task is not speed, but permanence. Once the scrolls are placed, he steps back and checks the cubby again. Everything is in order. The labels are visible, the ribbons aligned. The dust has not shifted too much. He turns and walks back toward his desk. There is still work to do. But this part, the quiet filing, the touch of paper, the knowledge that these records may never be read again, but must nonetheless be preserved, satisfying in its own quiet way. The archive is not a monument, it is a system, a structure of memory, and Marcus is one of its keepers. As the shadows within the tabularium lengthen and the shafts of sunlight grow warmer in tone, the clerks prepare to end their day. There is no signal, no bell, no proclamation. Like the final turning of a gear in a machine that never truly stops. Marcus examines the document he has been working on for the past hour, a dispute resolution involving 2 parties and a modest sum of coin. The scroll is nearly complete. The handwriting is slow, deliberate, matching the rest of the day's labor. Once his scrolls are laid aside, Marcus begins the process of cleaning his tools. The stylus is wiped with a cloth. First the writing end, then the flat smoothing end. The cloth itself is old, stained with ink and wax, but still usable. He refolds it precisely, as he does every day, and places it back into his pouch. The wax tablet is inspected for scratches or irregularities. Its surface will be smoothed tomorrow. There is no need tonight. The ink vial is stoppered tightly, wiped at the rim, and returned to the small wooden drawer beneath his desk. He clears the desktop slowly. Every object has its place. The scroll rack is emptied, the bench pushed in. A small oil lamp, used only on darker days, is snuffed out. The scent of burnt oil drifts lazily upward, mixing with the fading light and the settling dust. Around him, the other clerks do the same. No one speaks. The room descends into an even deeper silence as the final moments of the workday pass. He pauses at the doorway and looks back, not for sentiment, but from habit. The desks now sit in dimming light, like sentinels waiting for the next day. The scrolls are in their places. The tablets are stacked. The rhythm has completed one full cycle. He walks slowly toward the exit, the same path he has followed each day, unchanged in route or duration. The door creaks softly as he opens it. The cool evening air greets him with the faint scent of smoke and damp earth. The day's writing is done. Tomorrow's will be the same. The streets of Rome at dusk are not quiet, but to Marcus they are no longer loud. The sounds wash over him like a tide present, continuous but not distracting. Marcus passes without pause. His eyes scan, but they do not linger. He nods to a neighbor, though the man does not notice. The interaction is unnecessary. As he ascends the steps of his insula, the scent of cooked lentils drifts through a cracked doorway. The wooden stairs groan beneath his feet, always at the same places, always with the same tone. The latch sticks slightly, as it always does. The room greets him with stillness and the stale scent of old dust and oil. He sets his pouch on the bench. There is no ceremony to his return. The room has not changed. The walls are the same. Afterward, he lies back on the wooden bed, arms folded across his chest. The blanket is pulled to his waist. He does not anticipate tomorrow. He knows it will come. It will be the same. And that is enough. Gaius Livius Draco was born in Ostia, a bustling port city near Rome, sometime during the late 1st century BCE. His mother, a freedwoman, worked as a domestic assistant for a merchant's household, and his father's identity was never officially recorded. At the age of 12, Gaius was apprenticed to a municipal scribe named Tertius, whose reputation for meticulous legal transcription had earned him a stable, if modest, position within the local magistrate's office. Gaius began his training not with ink or scrolls, but with wax tablets. He spent weeks copying the same alphabet repeatedly, uppercased Roman capitals, then smaller cursive forms. His hand was corrected daily. Errors were circled, words rewritten. His tools were minimal: a stylus, a smoothing tool, and a wax surface that was erased and reused each day. He was not encouraged to think creatively. His role was to imitate. Each stroke had a model, each phrase a precedent. At 16, Gaius received his first assignment. He sat at a long table with 3 other clerks, copying names, addresses, tax statuses, and family relationships from oral reports. The system was slow but structured. One man recorded the names, another read them aloud, and Gaius transcribed. He learned to listen with divided attention, writing while absorbing the next line. The census documents followed a rigid formula: citizen name, head of household, list of dependents, property owned. His handwriting had to remain consistent. Errors were punished not with violence, but with erasure and repetition. Each completed sheet was reviewed by a senior clerk before it could be filed. Gaius made few mistakes. He quickly learned that clarity mattered more than speed. These early records would become part of Rome's centralized tax and labor registries, preserved long beyond his own lifetime, stored in archives he would never visit. Over the next 2 decades, Gaius moved between small towns and provincial offices. He transcribed land sales in Latium, processed loan agreements in Capua. Most of his days were spent indoors, seated behind simple wooden desks, his scrolls and styluses arranged in predictable configurations. His breaks were short, his meals simple. When not working, he read aloud from legal handbooks or copied sample contracts for practice. He rarely spoke during work hours. There was no need. He learned to gauge time by the soft shift in light across his parchment. He wore the same style of tunic daily. He reused wax tablets until they cracked. He had no family of his own, no children, no personal library. But he kept every stylus he had ever used, lining them up each evening in silent order. In his late 30s, Gaius was called to Rome to assist with a legal dispute in a senator's household. He was not told the case's details only, that his handwriting had been requested. In the senator's villa, he worked from a shaded corner, transcribing dictated statements into a formal register. The room was large, the walls painted with detailed frescoes, the floors tiled in geometric mosaics. Slaves moved through the corridors with quiet efficiency. Gaius remained seated for hours, capturing the proceedings in uninterrupted script. The senator never spoke to him directly. When the work was finished, Gaius returned to his provincial post. He mentioned the assignment to no one. The experience had changed nothing. The ink remained the same, the format of the scrolls unchanged, the legal phrasing unvaried. He had glimpsed elite life, but it had not glimpsed him in return. His handwriting, not his presence, had been invited. In his 42nd year, Gaius was stationed in a town near the Apennines when an earthquake struck shortly after sunrise. The tremor was brief, but strong enough to collapse parts of the records hall. Scrolls fell from their shelves. Dust rose in thick clouds. No one was seriously injured. Gaius stood motionless for several seconds, then calmly began gathering fallen documents. Some scrolls had been damaged, bindings snapped, tags torn. He retied what he could and laid the damaged records flat, pressing them under wooden boards to prevent further curling. By afternoon, he resumed transcription. His tablet had survived the quake without cracking. No additional tools were needed. When asked later what he remembered of the quake, he replied that the top row of property ledgers had shifted out of order. The scrolls had since been reclassified. The event was noted only briefly in the town records. Mild tremor, order restored. By the time Gaius reached his 50s, his hand had begun to tremble slightly. The senior magistrate noticed, and his duties were altered. He was reassigned to review old scrolls for preservation, a quieter task involving less direct writing and more comparison of tags and seals. He spent his days matching dates, checking handwriting consistency, ensuring that property documents were stored in the correct jurisdictional category. His pace slowed, but his accuracy remained high. He handled scrolls with deliberate care, brushing dust from the parchment with the sleeve of his tunic. He spoke even less than before. The other scribes gave him a respectful distance. He had become a fixture in the records room, like the shelves or the stone floor. He arrived early. He left at the same time each evening. He never raised his voice. He never missed a day. He rarely looked up from his scrolls. On a spring morning, the magistrate's assistant found Gaius seated at his desk, motionless. His stylus rested lightly on a nearly completed scroll. The ink had dried. His posture suggested no struggle. His eyes were closed. The scroll contained a property maintenance contract for a stable wall. It was filed later that day with no modifications. His tools were collected, his belongings minimal. There was no funeral. A note was added to the employee ledger: Gaius Livius Dracatus, position unfilled. His scrolls, however, remained. They continued to circulate. His hand, though stilled, persisted in margins and footers, in abbreviations and titles. Clerks who read his work recognized the handwriting, never stylish, never hurried, always correct. He left no family, no monument, just a record of work in broken, undramatic, but enduring. A life measured in ink, not words. The Roman wax tablet was not a luxury item. It was a tool, simple in design, and used daily by clerks, students, merchants, and officials alike. A standard wax tablet consisted of 2 flat wooden panels, slightly hollowed in the center and filled with beeswax, sometimes darkened with soot for better legibility. The wax was neither hard nor overly soft, resilient enough to retain impressions, yet pliable enough to smooth and reuse. The 2 panels were joined with leather cords or small hinges and folded together to protect the waxed surfaces when not in use. Scribes wrote using a stylus, typically made of bone or bronze. One end of the stylus was pointed for carving letters, while the opposite end was flat, designed to erase errors by warming and smoothing the wax. These tablets were reused many times. Once a document was copied to parchment, the wax surface was cleared, and the cycle began again. In the cold, wet soil of northern Britain, at the Roman fort of Vindolanda, hundreds of wooden writing tablets were preserved, protected from decay by the unique conditions of oxygen-deprived mud. These discoveries, made in the late 20th century, revealed the mundane and deeply personal communications of Roman soldiers and their families stationed along the edge of the empire. The tablets contained everything from supply lists to birthday invitations, requests for warm socks, and notes about household chores. The writing, done with ink on thin slats of wood, was faded but legible through infrared imaging and close visual inspection. Though small in size, these tablets offered rare glimpses into the daily routines of ordinary Romans. Each line, written quickly and without embellishment, reflected the same practicality found in the wax tablets used in the Roman heartland. The Vindolanda tablets were not grand proclamations. They were scraps of real life, carefully recorded and quietly forgotten. Roman scribes often wrote using shorthand systems, the most well-known of which was Tyronian notes, attributed to Marcus Tullius Tiro, the secretary of Cicero. This system employed hundreds of symbols, each representing frequently used Latin words or phrases. These symbols allowed scribes to take down dictation in real time, capturing long speeches, legal statements, and business transactions with minimal delay. The shorthand system was taught in schools for clerical apprentices and was passed down through scribal lineages. However, many of these symbols remain only partially understood today. making ancient shorthand documents difficult to decipher. The act of recording was highly mechanical. A scribe would hear a word, recall the corresponding symbol, and inscribe it into the wax with practiced movement. This required focus, discipline, and familiarity. Errors could be corrected by smoothing the wax, but most scribes, through endless repetition, rarely needed to do so. The work was efficient, quiet, and exacting. The wax used in Roman tablets was primarily beeswax, collected in large quantities from apiaries and refined through a heating and straining process. To improve visibility on the writing surface, soot or powdered charcoal was mixed into the wax, resulting in a darker background that better revealed the scratches made by the stylus. In some cases, plant-based resins or fragrances were added, though this was rare and largely dependent on the user's wealth or region. The texture of the wax varied with temperature. On cooler days, it could become too firm, requiring the clerk to press harder with the stylus. In warmer conditions, it softened, and careless pressure might cause the writing to blur or melt. Scribes became adept at adjusting the force and angle of their strokes to accommodate these shifts. Over time, the wax would thin or crack and need to be replaced, usually by reheating, scraping, and recoating the panel. Certain wax tablets were constructed with 3 or more panels, known as triptychs, designed for more formal or secure communication. The inner leaves, when folded and tied, concealed writing that was often sensitive in nature. Debt agreements, testimonies, private letters, these were sealed using wax stamps, typically impressed with a signet ring bearing the sender's insignia. A broken seal was an obvious sign of tampering, while the outer panels might include headers or non-sensitive summaries. The most important content was hidden within these seals, also provided legal verification of authenticity. In some cases, the tablet would be witnessed during the sealing process, and those names would be inscribed on the edge. Today, archaeologists studying such tablets use magnification and digital imaging to uncover faded impressions and damaged seals. The layers of protection, though simple in design, speak to a culture that valued both record-keeping and discretion, practical safeguards in a paperless world. Errors in wax writing were common but easily corrected. A clerk, upon noticing a misspelling or misalignment, would simply invert the stylus and apply the flat end to the wax surface. This action, often done with slow, circular motion, softened and smoothed the wax, allowing the mistake to disappear. Once the surface was level again, the line could be rewritten. Some tablets, in official work, clerks were trained to recognize errors before they occurred. They developed habits of pausing between phrases, double-checking names, and reviewing each completed line. Though erasures left slight variations in the wax's texture, they were not considered unprofessional unless they disrupted legibility. The repetitive nature of the task, combined with the ease of correction, encouraged consistency rather than speed. Perfection was expected, and monotony ensured it. Wax tablets were inherently fragile. They could melt, crack, warp, or become brittle with age. Fire destroyed them instantly. Heat from Roman summers often deformed them, and careless storage led to irreversible damage. Most tablets that survived into the modern age did so by accident, lost in wells, thrown into latrines, or buried in sealed pits. Such conditions, though unsanitary, created microenvironments free from oxygen, bacteria, and insects. These rare survivors tell us much about what was once common. Many show signs of reused, deep grooves from repeated inscription, faint shadows of previous words, or impressions from seals long dislodged. Tablets not archived properly were often scraped clean and passed to another clerk. Over time, the wax would lose its sheen, the wood would splinter at the edges, and the tablet would be discarded. The vast majority are gone, forgotten. Only a few remain fragments of a writing system built not to last, but to serve. Modern scholars study wax tablets using a combination of visual inspection, digital microscopy, and multispectral imaging. Under raking light, even the faintest grooves become visible. Some tablets reveal not one, but multiple layers of writing ghosts of words, erased and overwritten. Museums and university archives catalog these findings meticulously, assigning each piece a registration code and metadata file. Some are photographed under various wavelengths to expose differences in composition or pressure. The analysis is slow and cumulative. Deciphering a single tablet can take months. When symbols or shorthand are involved, interpretations are even more tentative. Researchers cross-reference handwriting styles, stylus widths, and spelling conventions to date and authenticate each tablet. Though many hold only routine content, the act of preserving and understanding them remains essential. These quiet objects, once discarded or lost, now inform our understanding of daily communication in ancient Rome. Their survival is unremarkable and yet quietly invaluable. The Curia, Rome's Senate house, stood as a symbol of civic order and continuity. Yet just outside its grand doors, in a lesser corridor shadowed by the rising stone, clerks waited. These clerks were not senators, not magistrates, not orators. Their presence was barely noted. Dressed plainly, often in slightly better fabric than their provincial peers, they held scrolls or tablets, ready to be summoned at a moment's notice. When a senator dictated, they recorded. When a vote was tallied, they noted the names. They did not interpret the debates. They preserved the structure. They transcribed decisions into official formulas, matching exact formats as required by tradition. Some days they were never called inside. Other days they spent hours quietly leaning over desks, heads bowed under the pressure of time. No applause greeted their work. Their presence was expected, but never praised. They left as silently as they arrived. The work continued. In Roman governmental life, no official decree could be enacted without documentation. The scribal clerks were tasked with ensuring that every proclamation, edict, or legal pronouncement followed a set structure. These documents began with formal dating systems, often referencing the consuls in office, the year since the founding of the city, or the regnal year of the emperor. The structure continued with standardized phrases of legal consequence. Variations were discouraged. The margins were measured, spacing regulated, seals placed precisely. Once written, a decree might be copied multiple times for storage in various archives. Scribes reviewed each version against a master draft. Any deviation required correction and reinscription. They worked without distraction, seated at long tables, focused solely on replication. The content changed tax laws, citizenship grants, building ordinances, but the form did not. The format itself was an act of power. The clerks did not hold that power. They preserved it. Inside the great Roman tabularia governmental archives built into temples or public buildings, rows of shelves housed thousands of scrolls, each tied, tagged, and arranged. The air was thick with dust and silence. Light was minimal. Inside, clerks spent long hours sorting, retrieving, and refiling legal records. They carried no weapons, wore no crests, and made no speeches. Their tools were string, ink, wax, and their own careful hands. Some days involved reading dozens of old scrolls to verify wording or confirm filing order. The physical movement was minimal. A clerk might sit for hours without speaking, moving only his eyes and hands. If a document was misplaced, he corrected it. If a tag had faded, he replaced it. There was no formal recognition for these tasks. Their value was assumed. Without them, the system collapsed. But with them, it simply functioned, quietly, repetitively, without disruption or remark. In provincial cities, magistrates often employed personal scribes clerks, trusted with confidential matters. These scribes began work before sunrise, preparing documents for the day's hearings. They arranged scrolls in order of appearance, laid out wax tablets for impromptu notes, and ensured that legal formulas were referenced accurately. During public hearings, they sat beside the magistrate, noting witness names, summarizing testimony, and transcribing judgments. The magistrate received credit for decisions. The scribe ensured they were recorded. In the evenings, the clerk reviewed his notes, transcribed official versions, and filed duplicates. Any missing detail, name, date, clause could result in appeals or confusion. Thus, these clerks worked with quiet pressure, their minds occupied not with decisions, but with formatting and continuity. They seldom left the magistrate's side. Their loyalty was procedural, not emotional. Each day resembled the one before, structured by routine, regulated by expectation, carried out in silence. At the end of each month, bureaucratic reports were compiled and dispatched across the empire. Each office had its routine. Duplicate copies were made, scrolls labeled, packets sealed with wax, and lists confirmed against previous entries. These tasks took days. Clerks worked from sunrise to dusk, cross-referencing entries, measuring margins, and verifying numerical accuracy. The duplication process was manual. One scroll read aloud, while others transcribed simultaneously. Seals were pressed firmly, using official rings. Strings were knotted tightly and tied in a standardized pattern. Once bundled, scrolls were placed in wooden cases, carried by couriers to regional archives, or forwarded to Rome. There was little variance from month to month. Whether the report was on road repairs, legal hearings, or census tallies, the process was the same. The ritual mattered more than the content. The repetition ensured reliability. For the scribes, this was their contribution, not decision-making, but uniformity. Among Rome's elite households, scribes worked under different conditions, though their routines remained similar. Wealthy patrons employed clerks to write letters, copy literary texts, and record household expenditures. They worked in quieter rooms, often within private libraries or shaded atriums. They transcribed poetry, dictated correspondence, and managed guest lists. Some even copied works of philosophy. Yet the work remained that of a servant, valued for precision, not for intellect. A misplaced word in a senator's letter could cause social embarrassment. Thus, clerks double-checked spelling, phrasing, and honorifics. While their environment was more comfortable, marble floors, fresh air, meals at regular hours, their role was unchanged. They existed to support, to copy, to maintain order. They were surrounded by luxury they could not partake in. The scrolls were not theirs. The poetry was not theirs. They held the words, but not the meaning. The script remained. The scribe, invisible. Clerks were paid in modest sums, or, if enslaved, received basic sustenance and the hope of manumission. Freedmen who rose through diligence could eventually earn small estates or secure positions for their sons in similar work. Prestige was limited. They were respected as functionaries, not as thinkers. Their names appeared only in ledgers, not on monuments. A few skilled scribes were entrusted with sensitive legal matters or became librarians, managing scroll inventories for noble families. But most remained anonymous. Their work was essential, yet taken for granted. Their legacy was not in fame, but in the endurance of the systems they supported. Generations of documents bear their careful hands, yet few bear their names. Their role was to persist, not to be remembered. Their handwriting was recognized, their identity was not. Each day ended with quiet, predictable tasks. Ink was sealed, tablets were stacked, scrolls were wrapped and placed in storage racks. Lamps were trimmed or extinguished. The last clerk out would check that all drawers were closed, that no parchment lay exposed to moisture or dust. Nothing was rushed. Each motion followed habit. The steps had been repeated so often that deviation felt unnatural. A misplaced scroll would be noticed the next morning. A missing label could delay the work of others. Thus, even as fatigue crept in, attention was maintained. Clerks exited one by one, some walking together, most walking alone. The silence of the room lingered after their departure, disturbed only by the creaking of wood or the cooling of oil. The day's labor, though ordinary, had been performed fully. The room would sleep until sunrise, and then the same rituals would begin again, unchanged. And now the stylus stills, the scrolls are tied, the lamps are dimmed. The lives of Roman scribal clerks quiet, measured, and so often forgotten echo gently across time in faded ink and softened wax. They did not conquer cities, they did not lead armies, they did not sculpt marble statues or compose symphonies of words, but they preserved them, copied them, carried them forward. The rhythm of their days, wake, write, file, repeat, was not so different from the rhythm of our own. As you lie here, warm and safe, beneath your own blanket, remember the quiet room of the tabularium, the slow scratch of the stylus, the scent of parchment and beeswax, the calm, practiced repetition. Their work was never meant to be thrilling. It was meant to endure, and in some way it has. Let your thoughts slow now. Let them drift like dust in candlelight. There is no more to do, no more to write, only stillness, only sleep. The past is resting, and so should you. Good night, and thank you for dreaming with us.